Hi everyone, today we're going to look at a reticulated python and maternal incubation. So essentially pythons, they maternally incubate their eggs. So that basically means once they lay their eggs, they'll actually wrap around the eggs, they'll actually protect their eggs and actually dedicate their life, at least that portion of their life, to the incubation and successful hatching of their eggs. So we're going to show you kind of a messy example of a captive maternal incubation of reticulated python. It's not nearly as pretty and clean when we're doing maternal incubation like this, because these animals are just wrapped all around these little babies. But here you go. So we just pulled a couple of these eggs, and you know, they look they probably look like what it would look like in the wild. And see this little baby snake sitting there. And if I want to be a monster, I can go forceps.
What's wrong with doing it this way?
Well, there's no blood vessels, so it doesn't matter. This egg is just really it's just okay. If I look at that egg and then I compare it to, all right, if we look at an egg like this,
so this is how it would look in the wild, right?
Yes, this is a lot like what it would look in the wild. Actually, probably even dirtier. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to make little air holes. So we would take that and we make sure this is the not beauty part of breeding snakes. So what we do is I create an air pocket. So if I mess with this egg too much, the inside of this egg is all lined with blood vessels, and that basically provides oxygen absorption for the developing or the neonate snake inside the egg to be able to breathe until it finally slices. So if I look, so let's say if I look, oops. So one thing I want to probably note, all right, here's a baby that slid on its own. And these eggs are a little bit desiccated. So everybody always hears me use desiccated. So that means they're a little bit dry. So we have, right in this case, we have a het orange ghost stripe, little baby here. So when these eggs have dried out a bit and they're desiccated, when they do slit, a lot of times you don't get all this fluid coming out. So a couple things to note besides my ugly eggs. We have a very protective mom. Protective mom means, what are you doing with my eggs? And she has a relationship with these eggs. So she's a pretty wonderful snake. I've been interacting with her a bit. We've actually already had her out. She's climbing around and while we're messing with her babies, but you can see a couple babies right here. There's a baby. There's a baby. So what she basically, she's on point. See that? The way she's whatever. So I really give her a lot of credit because she's not trying to bite us or anything like that. So what's happening is she has her protective relationship with these eggs. It's largely, you know, it's chemical. So the smell of the eggs. So a couple things I noticed before they began to hatch, she started opening up her coils, and she knew that, you know, something was going to happen. And I just watched her behavior change, where all of a sudden she started exposing her eggs. And for that afternoon, I didn't see any babies slit until that evening. And then all of a sudden in the evening, I started noticing a couple of babies. So one of the things you need to consider when you have a large mound of eggs, and these eggs are all stuck together. So the eggs that are on the inside part of the pile, they're basically covered in other eggs. So one thing you want to do just to be a little bit, you know, to get better odds is I start peeling the eggs away, because what happens is the internal babies will slice out of their egg and they'll slice into another egg, and if there's a lot of fluid in there, they'll basically suffocate because they're giving everything. When they start slicing through the eggs, they're also slicing through blood vessels, so there's going to be a lot of bleeding. It's also going to be one of the most dire points of that neonate's life. It needs to get out of the egg into the atmosphere where it can actually start breathing and stop depending on just oxygen supply that's being taken in through the atmosphere into the egg through the blood vessels.
What's a neonate? Because that's a word I've never heard before.
Neonate. Neonate is basically, it's a baby. We always, so I can sound more intelligent, I have to substitute, it's a baby.
Well, I thought that's what you were doing. I thought you were trying to be intelligent using.
I try to be intelligent. I'm a faker. So anyways, so we talked about neonates and embryos. So basically we have an embryo, and then once it develops into a neonate. and then a young snake or a juvenile snake and all that kind of stuff. But neonate is a very analytical term for little baby snake. This is something I generally do not do because this is a little bit trying on this animal. She'll be, for the 100 days or so it takes for this incubation to occur. Normally reticulated pythons at 88 degrees takes about 86 days to hatch, 86, 88 days, and it's even longer when it's maternal. During that time, if she's wrapped around her clutch of eggs, every time somebody enters the room and is moving around, she's a little bit on point, so she's thinking that she has to defend her clutch of eggs. So that's probably going to add more stress to her life, as opposed to if I actually took the clutch of eggs away from her in the very beginning and then I did artificial incubation. I can then clean her off, rid her of the smell, and get her cage cleaned up, and she'll get right back onto feeding and basically take the stress down in her life. So there are a couple reasons why we generally don't maternally incubate. Another thing is I don't have as much control, and I'm no expert on maternal incubation because I generally do depend on artificial incubation when I'm pulling my eggs, because I can manage them. Sometimes even I make screw ups, and sometimes things dry out, and anything can happen. But we decided to let this female do this just for fun and actually running out of space. And it's really pretty interesting because she's wonderful, and even some of these eggs, they look terrible. I was really thinking we were going to have a lot of egg mortality. See what she's doing? See that little bit? See how she's making these slight, when you go back and look at your video, you're gonna notice she makes these slight movements. Yeah. So this is her, see right there? She's like just that little slight movement. So I'm kind of testing the limits of what kind of relationship I can have with this animal, because she is very much on point. And she has really tolerated me doing a lot, and that's wonderful. So that's basically saying that this animal is using its brain, and she's just not reacting on instinct, which I'm super impressed. This is one of my favorite things, because I'm getting to interact with the brain of the animal and actually being able to understand the animal and read it and stuff. So this is just a little personal experiment and mess, and it does look kind of messy.
Yeah, I want to ask you some questions about this. So this looks, to somebody like me that doesn't know what's going on, why is this sphagnum moss we're using here?
This is sphagnum. It's kind of a mess now.
So why does it look like this? You want to, because it's natural?
So for 90 days or 100 days or whatever, how many days it's been, I don't even know. We've been spraying the cage, and you want to put some kind of medium in the cage that has some humidity. So now one of the next things we'll do, as eggs get to the end and they're ready to hatch, they release an enzyme that makes them easier to slit and slice with this little baby's egg tooth. So right on the tip of his little nose, I don't know if you will be able to see it, but right there is a little tooth, and it's like glued to the tip of his nose, and it's gonna go around and he's gonna keep slicing his egg. But with the enzyme that's being released in here, it makes this egg very easy to slice. Another thing it also makes it easy to do is to peel apart. So eggs naturally want to stay stuck together, and when they get at this point, they tear easy and they come apart easier. So there we go, you got some fluid in there. So like I said, this is the scariest time in this egg's life, because this is when this little guy is trying to get out, and it needs to slice, and it needs to find some oxygen. So that's a golden child, and that's a live golden child. So it's moving around, there's a little bit of blood there. When I do this, I might break a blood vessel here and there, but nothing more than probably what the baby's gonna do just naturally. But I'm giving this guy a little helping hand, so I've created an air pocket, and then I just kind of sit here and I look at different eggs. So that one, I've already visited this egg right here.
In the wild, do they often die in the egg?
Oh, I don't really get to sit here and see it, but yeah, I would think that their mortality is high, especially those eggs that are inside the pile. So this baby will go along and start slicing. Well, if I have another egg that's attached right there, it will slice into there, and sometimes that fluid from the other egg can actually go in there and further create problems, because these guys at this point, they need air. Their demands for oxygen are significant. This is a tough egg right there. There we go. So anybody want to see what that is? It says albumin. See how it's green like that? If we went and cultured that, usually very common Pseudomonas or common, bacteria is something called aeruginosa, and green fluid like that is a really good indicator of Pseudomonas aeruginosa. But a nice healthy animal can often sustain having bacteria in its environment, and also in its we basically ambient bacteria. These animals do not live in sterile situations, and if I were to do blood samples from these and I basically start culturing stuff, I culture all sorts of different bacteria in these animals. And the trick is for the animal's immune system to be solid and keep the stress down, and basically a nice healthy immune response can basically hold a lot of different Pseudomonas and different bacteria at bay, and that's why they don't come down with these infections. So there's a magical balance going on here, just in a snake's life. And in captivity, we're often, if we don't nail our husbandry right, we basically don't help that animal in its immune response, and sometimes things kind of go wrong. That's a really nice, probably super golden child. And I just go through this thing, but this is a nice little baby. Look at this. Look at this. This is wonderful. Like, she's decided that I'm not really a big threat. And I love that. That is just so wonderful. Snake's trying to get out. So the trick is just to go through this clutch. So we have some egg mortality. So like this egg is good. This guy's already slit right there. But let's take a look. So sometimes these eggs at the bottom. So this egg has failed. That egg was crushed. This egg right here is probably a really good chance that this baby, this neonate, yeah. Okay, so I know right off the bat, when I open it up and I get a little bit of blood like that, and it's not just blood immediately from a blood vessel, but there's blood in all the albumin, that snake is dead. And if I take this out here, and smell that one egg, significant and stinky. So this one's good. Yeah, so if I do this, let's look at all the Pseudomonas aeruginosa, but that snake is quite alive. So you just create a little air pocket. A lot of these snakes have slit. So this one I can tell the snake is slit wherever it is. There it is. Yep. And the next trick is, as I'm going through this clutch, is to put these in a bin where I'm not stacking any of them on top of each other. All right. We might have some. So that's a dead egg. I can smell it and tell. Smell your eggs. Close in on her. Yeah. Mama. You got babies in the background. Look at that. So the next step is I'm going to take out all the eggs. We're going to put it in a flat container where we can just, put them out there. We can assess everything, clean it all up, and actually pretty much clean up her cage and get the chemical cues out of the snake's environment now, which is basically washing off, cleaning her cage and getting her back to feeding. And so she doesn't really have any stress, but I'm really proud of her. What a wonderful mom.